Welcome back, everyone. This morning I'm joined by Carrie Woerner, Assemblywoman for the 113th District. And we've got a lot to cover, so we're going to jump right into it, a lot of topics. First, Assemblywoman, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure, Justin. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's always great to see you, Carrie. Hey, let's talk about a couple of things that are going on in the 113th. I received just sort of an overview from Jeremy about the budget. And let's just talk about that. Highlights for the budget.
You know, some of the highlights for the budget that are relevant in the 113th Assembly District really start with agriculture. So for the most part, the agriculture programs that our region depends on were fully funded in this year's budget. And then in addition, we were able to get some common sense changes made to the farm worker labor bill that was passed last year that really were important for the family farms that are so prevalent in the 113th Assembly District. We were also able to, at this point, hold the funding flat for K through 12 education. I hope that's what we end up with over the course of the year, but we were able to keep it flat. Really thanks to the federal government contributing $1 billion towards education. And then more particular to the 113th Assembly District, we have a number of smaller districts that are self-insured through an education trust. And that's been done on a waiver basis to create a small group for the school districts. That was set to expire at the end of this year. We were able to get them a 1-year extension, which is really important because had we been unable to do that, that would have meant hundreds of thousands of additional dollars of expense for these small school districts, which far exceeds their ability to raise additional revenue under the tax cap. For Saratoga Springs, really important, we were able to keep the VLT aid funding that comes to the host communities, to keep that in place. So that means once the casino starts back up again in Saratoga, the VLT aid will flow to the city. So that was very important. So those are some of the big highlights that were impactful in the budget for our communities. We also were able to fully fund the CHIPS money, which is the consolidated highway money that each of the municipalities gets for doing road maintenance, and we put a 1-year DOT capital plan in place for doing road and bridge work throughout the district. Our region of the state has more miles of roads and bridges than any other part of the state. So it's really important to us to have those funds available to do that infrastructure work.
Gotcha. The bail discovery reform.
Yes.
We hear a lot about that. And I want to talk about COVID-19, but I do want to give you the opportunity just to talk about a couple of the highlights. What about the Bail Discovery Act?
Yeah, so this was something that in our district, I heard so much feedback over the course of the last 6 months. People concerned about public safety in our communities as a result of the reforms that were put in place last year. And I worked over the time period, I worked with our district attorneys, with our sheriffs, to really understand where improvements needed to be made. Where did we need to strike a different balance between public safety and ensuring that people who have not yet been tried are not incarcerated early, that we strike a better balance there. And so we were able to get some changes made in the budget to make bail eligible. I'm going to call them crimes with intent. So intent to do harm. Those crimes are now included as bail eligible offenses. Crimes where there is a fatality, those are now bail eligible. So there are some others, but I'd use that as the categorization. And then on the discovery side, we were able to increase the amount of time that district attorneys and law enforcement have to produce discovery materials, and distinguish between a time period for those who are being held pretrial and those that are not. So those that are not, you have more time. Those that are, it is slightly more time than the 15 days. It's 20 days, but not as much as if it was somebody who was not held pretrial. That's 35 days. And then in addition, there were real concerns about privacy for first responders information, privacy for victims information, privacy for witness information. And we were able to get some changes in that language to better protect the privacy of the first responders, of nurses and healthcare workers, so that there is now a presumption that those are not discoverable. And the defense has the ability to make a motion that says they want that information, but they have to demonstrate that there's a good reason for it. So we were able to make some changes. They were, it restores some amount of discretion to the judges, which is positive. Doesn't take it as far as I would have liked, doesn't take it as far as others would have liked, but it's a step in the right direction.
Well, you really made some good moves on that. I've been following that from the very beginning. I've interviewed Jason Carasone, and the DAs were just stunned by the initial bill.
Yeah.
And so thank you for doing the work on that, and thanks for the updates. All right, you consider the whole country has been turned upside down by this crisis,
Yes.
But in our district especially, we've got an inordinate number of rural communities. We have an inordinate number of small businesses. I'd like to chip away at a couple of the things that you're doing to try to protect the people in the district. Let's start with education and broadband. Always an issue with us, right?
Always an issue. And, we put through the governor's broadband initiative over a 3-year period, we put hundreds of millions of dollars into providing broadband coverage for all. We're in the third phase of that. But what this crisis has really revealed is the lack, and how even with all that investment, there is still a significant lack. So where you have households where people have, we've got 2 parents who are working at home, we have a couple of kids that are learning at home. So for the minimum standards that the broadband initiative was meant to implement is insufficient for that level of dependence on internet access. And then as well, we still have many, many households where there is no internet access at all. I probably on a daily basis, I probably get 2 or 3 emails from people, or phone calls from people who say, I can't, I have been sent home to do work from home and I can't work from home. So we really have got to rethink how we approach broadband. And my view is we need to regulate it like an industry. We need to really call on the companies to make that investment. We need to increase the public subsidies that make it possible for that investment to happen. We have to anticipate that these kinds of pandemics will happen again, and that when they do, and we need people to be able to be home and work from home and learn from home, that only really works well if the internet access is available. And I've been in contact with our BOCES superintendent about gathering up the data for me on what number of students are unable to take advantage of the online learning capabilities, so that we can start to quantify what this lack means, and go beyond anecdotal or the 1 or 2 or 3 calls I get a day to some more specific information that really articulates where the lack is and what's the result of having that lack.
Gotcha. Where should a parent or guardian go? Say you don't have internet access, or you're living in a rural area where broadband is just iffy at best. What kind of options do parents have or guardians have right now?
Very, very limited options. So anecdotally, what I'm hearing is people who are driving to the parking lot of their local library and taking advantage of the Wi-Fi that's available in the parking lot of the library. So, imagine how hard it is to be in your home working on schoolwork, doing your own work. Now imagine that you've loaded all the kids into the minivan and you're parked in the parking lot of the library in order for the kids to do their lessons online and you to do your work emails online. That, it's just not, it's not feasible. It's certainly not, it's not a scalable model. It's not a sustainable model, but that's what people are forced to do. Or instead of that, they are, they're picking up packets of worksheets for their kids at the local school, and every couple of days they're, completing the worksheets and then driving them back to the school. Also not a very efficient system. So it's not, these kinds of things will happen again. Sadly, we can anticipate they're going to happen again. And what we should take away from this experience is a prioritization of truly providing internet access for everyone, and sizing the minimum standard to meet the needs of one or two parents working from home, one or two students doing schoolwork from home, which includes, online video chats, all of the things that that in a suburban community we can do, and we almost take for granted that we can do.
Right, it's true. If there is a silver lining to this, I've heard it. I interviewed James Dexter the other day, and who's the head of all 31 school districts in BOCES, and he spoke about many of the same things that you just mentioned, and with the overriding hope that when something like this happens, you learn a lesson, and you realize that you rearrange your priorities a bit. And education should be right up at the top of the list, with healthcare and any of the other things that really affect the well-being of the community. Carrie, I got one other question I want to ask you. News is very conflicting coming out of Washington, especially about the federal programs for small businesses. I know I'm feeling it, and I'm one of hundreds in the district. Give us an update on what you know about any of the PPP proposals, any of the disaster aid proposals, cash advances, any of that stuff.
So the Paycheck Protection Program is really the critical program for so many of our small businesses. And so what I have heard, what I've read is that as of today, about 2% of the applications that have been submitted in New York have now been funded, and the monies have flowed to those businesses. So that's the good news. The money is flowing. 2%, not very much, but it's moving in the right direction. The bad news is I've also read that at the rate and pace that they are funding these applications, that pool of money, the $350 million that was set aside in the New York, or in the CARES Act that the federal government passed, that money will run out next week. So we really need our congressional representatives to set politics aside and add money to that fund so that we can continue to provide the relief to our small businesses. It doesn't, as we have the conversation about how do we reopen the economy, how do we get things started, it does not help at all if we have employees that are disconnected from their employer by virtue of being laid off and now on unemployment. And it doesn't help if those businesses, when they are restarting, are restarting with a mountain of debt. So, the structure of the Paycheck Protection Program is a great one. It starts out as a loan, very low interest. But if you keep your employees on the payroll and you use the money for the payroll so that they're not on unemployment, and then you can also use it for rent and utilities, that means that when you go to start up, you're not starting from scratch. You're not having to hire people. You're not having to pay off debt. You're able to basically, when the starting gun goes off, you're able to get going. And that's what we need. So I just am, I'd like to just use this moment to say to our congressional leaders, please set politics aside. Let's fund this program so that we can continue to make sure that our small businesses are strong.
I got it. Boy, I couldn't agree with you more. And, I live it every day, as any number of other small businesses do.
Indeed.
So I totally know it. Well, Assemblywoman, thank you very much for joining us. I just want to give everybody an opportunity. It's a time for a personal message, time for something you'd just like to say to the constituents.
I would just like to say that I know how hard this is. it is a time of isolation. I'm Whether you have a big family and you're, kind of getting on each other's nerves because you've spent too much time in close quarters, or like me, you live alone and struggling with the feelings of isolation and the loneliness that goes with it. I know this is a tremendously difficult time. But what we're doing is important. It's helping to keep the rate of infections down so that our hospitals can manage it. And so I just encourage everybody to be strong, to use technology if you have access to it to connect you with other people. Take up letter writing if you don't. We can go old school, because this is going to be a tough time. We will get all through it, and we will be stronger for having been through it. But I know we're all feeling the challenges that this is presenting to us.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thanks for saying that. Stay safe, Carrie, okay? And we'll check back with you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Be well.
You too. Bye.